Welcome, one and all, to our study research, Fulbright Study Research Award info session. I'm just delighted that we could all be here together virtually to talk about specifically about the essays for the Study Research Award. So Dr. Hogue is out of the office today, so he will not be joining us, but he sends his greetings. And so I will be talking with you today about focusing on the statement of grant purpose and the personal statement, and just talking through some specific ways to how you might write that, begin and draft those essays. Before we do that, I just want to highlight a few things. You no doubt saw Dr. Hogue's email that he sent out this morning. It just details a couple different, it's our Monday newsletter. It details a few different things, in particular, some things that are coming up this week that we have due, let's see, Wednesday. Today's the 10th and it's due on the 12th. So I just want to note those things. And these things are directly related to your essays. So they're linked to the content we're talking about today. So you want to be sure that you complete the essay free write document, and then also the information form. I'm blanking on what we call it. It's the application details form. So it's another Google form. I know we've asked for a couple of those so far, but we've gone from kind of articulated this before, but just to re-articulate this, we've gone from a larger group of folks, and we're kind of have funneled things down to those that we know that are applying next year, and so that's helpful for us so that we know how to help you. But then also, as we're starting the application proper, part of the information there that we'll receive is a further confirmation of which award in which country you're applying for, because there's been a little bit of sort of fluidity there. But then who you think you might ask for your 3 recommendations, and then your faculty mentor as well, and who you think you might be interested in with your faculty mentor. We don't want you to ask the recommenders or the faculty mentor yet. The faculty mentor will be one of your recommenders. We will ask the faculty mentor for their if they're willing to take on this role. It's just easier because we know what that role entails, and so it's just easier for us to communicate that. And then the recommenders will give you some further guidance about what to ask them. Let's see, I kind of skipped over the free write. So we are going to for the free write document. It's essentially, you're going to take what we're the guidance that we're offering here in this session and transfer it to this free write document. And we've taken from the application either the questions that are asked in the evaluation form, which are very closely linked to the application. We have to complete an evaluation form at the end of the process. So we're taking some questions from that are a part of your application, but they're also just sort of intrinsic to the Fulbright application. And so that's going to prompt some answers from you, and that will be a start. If you haven't started your essays yet, that will be a start to your essays. And the themes and topics that you'll be responding to in that document, you'll hear me talk about those things today. So we're asking you to complete both those things by the 12th. We have, I don't remember if, I'm not recalling if Dr. Hogue mentioned this in the email for the free write document, but we are, what we're going to do, the easiest way, we would like to be able to see that free write document, and then we're going to have some time later in May, to be able to talk with you about the free writing document to help you develop your essays. So the best way for us to see that is we're going to, I think this is actually going to happen today. We're going to open up some box folders and just you'll get an invitation for a box folder with your name in it, and you'll just upload it into that folder. And so you'll be using that folder for other things throughout the process too. So so just to note that. Let's see, there's one other thing I wanted to mention, and if you haven't opened your application on online on the Fulbright website, we've asked you to do that way back in March 31st when the application's open. But if you haven't done it, that's fine. Just we want you to do that now, because there's a timestamp on when you open the application. The committees can see that. We have no idea how or if that impacts things, but if you've been working on it since now, you want that kind of indicated in that timestamp. So just that also helps us know. We've been talking to lots and lots of applicants, but not everyone has opened an application. So we want to make sure that kind of also helps us know who is sort of officially in here. So please do, if you haven't done that yet, after this session, it'll take 2 minutes. Just open it up. And also, you can either indicate you're applying through Baylor or at large. You'll want to indicate Baylor. I mean, the choice is yours, but if you're at large, then you have to do it on your own. But if you apply through Baylor, you get our help. So just make sure you do that. And also, we can't see, if you don't indicate through Baylor, then we can't see you on our end of things of the portal. So just do make sure you do that. Let me actually pause there and just see, are there any questions about those few things? Take a drink of coffee. No questions? Fantastic. Let's jump into the heart of the matter here, which is the essays that you'll be writing. And your essays really are going to be the heart of your application, or the sort of most important part. I mean, there are several very important parts, but the essays are really vital. And they're vital because the committee will be, as they look at your application, they will look at all the biographical information. There are a few short answers, there's some essays, there are transcripts, there are recommendations, the CCE form, the campus committee evaluation form that we fill out, and your letter of affiliation as well. I think that's it. I think, yeah, that's the application right there. But so they'll get to know you through all of these different parts, but your essays will be your voice telling your story, why you're interested in this award to this country to go do this thing. And so this is how you tell the committee who you are. And so I don't know, think of it as if you were meeting someone somewhere, introducing yourself, and in conversation, this would be you saying, oh yeah, if they ask questions, like, oh yeah, this is what I have to say about me. That you won't be able to meet the committee. There potentially could be an interview with the second committee. Don't worry about that right now. We'll explain that a little bit further down the road. But there often is not an interview, so you won't be able to verbally say, hey, this is who I am. It's through these essays that they'll get to know you. Okay, I'm going to start with talking about the statement of grant purpose, because it is the first essay that your committee will read, and so yeah, that will be that's the ideal place to start. Actually, let me take a step back, and we'll probably continue to talk about the structure of the two different committees after you submit your application. We'll probably talk about that throughout the process, because there's just a lot of information involved in the Fulbright process. But maybe I should just say once you submit your application, we have our internal deadline on October 1st, and then you wait for not that long period of time. The first committees that make a decision are on the US side of things. They're called the National Screening Committees, NSCs. And they meet in November and December, and then you're notified. Typically, it's in January at some point. So you're notified if you have become a finalist. In Fulbright language, they call it a semifinalist, but it's basically a finalist. And then they forward things on to the in-country commission. And so say you're applying to the UK. And so the UK commission will, the UK actually is one country that does do some interviews at this point. And so there could be an interview at that point, but there's often not, but there sometimes is. That's one of those it depends Fulbright answers. But with that in-country commission, they'll start making decisions, and then they'll make, with the finalists, they'll make that final decision. And that this year they made decisions between February, and there still are a few that haven't made a decision. We're waiting on one applicant actually. Typically it's at the latest April 15th, but often in March and April earlier, we learn things. So since I mentioned that, I figured that would be helpful to talk about that. Okay, so let's start talking about the essays here. So just some general guidance on essay writing. I've taught my PhDs in English, and so I've taught a bunch of both literature, but also composition classes. And in both classes, the thing I end up saying most to students, and I should say this is true also with the essay feedback. Dr. Hogan, I just read hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of essays each year. So with essay feedback, the sort of common refrain always is clarity and specificity. And so that should be at the forefront of your mind as you're writing these essays. How can I be more clear about what I'm saying? You only have, for the statement of grant purpose, 2 pages single spaced, and for the personal statement, 1 page single space. That is not very much space. You've got to say a lot in a short period of time. So how can I do so with clarity and in a sort of succinct manner? And also how can I be as specific as possible? And so, when you're talking about, I'll probably mention this a little bit more as we go along, but just as an example for clarity or for specificity, if you say things like, at some point in your essays, you're going to have to talk about your interest in cultural exchange. And so on one end, how you might bring your slice of US culture to the host country, and then how you might be receptive to the host country culture. You don't want to just say, yeah, I'm really interested, what I can, sort of the slice of US culture that I can talk about is freedom in America or something like this. So that's way too broad, right? You want to be much more specific. And in fact, I'll give you some specific things you might talk about. So I'll refrain from saying some of those things, but you might think more locally, more regionally, or if you want to talk about freedom, what specific aspect of freedom. I wouldn't, freedom is such a sort of amorphous type of word or phrase. I would avoid that. So yeah, so that's, and then maybe in turn with the host country culture, wouldn't want to say, I don't know, make some sort of broad statement about the UK, but you could say, if you're applying to Liverpool, you'd say, I am really excited about this museum in Liverpool and walking or running along the river in Liverpool. So specificity, clarity, those are your friends, and you always want to be thinking about such things. So now focusing more specifically to the statement of grant purpose. Sorry, I'm pulling up my notes here. So a couple of things about the statement of grant purpose. It is the more specific and direct document, and so there is some art and finesse to it, certainly, but between the two, you want to ground what you're talking about in the sort of some concrete examples. And so you're answering these sort of journalistic questions: who, what, when, where, why, how, of your Fulbright grant that you want to pursue. And you're going to want to be direct and sort of get to it right away. So why are you applying for this program, this master's program? So why this academic discipline? Why this university? what classes, professors, institutes, sort of facilities they have, labs or whatever. Why, what are those sort of elements that are drawing you to the program? Let's see, what else? Maybe there's a kind of connection with another institution or something like that, a partner institution. Maybe there's we have some public health applicants who the public health programs they're applying to are part of One Health, which is this global health program. And so maybe that sort of emphasis on One Health and that experience is something you want to talk about. And then you also do want to be able to address the sort of cultural exchange interests and as they relate to your academic pursuits. So here's an example. Maybe again with the public health example, if you're maybe another draw to doing a public health degree in the UK is that they have, they don't have privatized healthcare like we do. And so getting experience in a different kind of healthcare setting will help you better understand public health, something like that. So those are the sorts of questions that you'll definitely want to answer. Let me see if I'm forgetting anything. Oh yeah, something that's helpful to note as you're talking about the university and your interest in the university, you'll want to highlight your letter of affiliation, the person who's writing your letter of affiliation. You're going to get that a little bit later in the process, and so you will not have to worry about that right away. So you can add that in later. But mentioning, oh, Dr. So-and-so, I developed this relationship with Dr. So-and-so, and she's a leading expert in blah, 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 and would help develop my whatever skills in these ways. And, she's enthusiastically encouraging me to apply or whatever, something. It'll be brief, but that will be an important element of this as well. So then, well, actually, before I move on from this, so I've been talking about the study award. If you're applying for a research award, then, and if you haven't talked with us about the research awards a little bit, especially if you're finishing up your undergraduate degree, applying for the research award is, as you've heard from us, can be sort of a tough hill to climb. And so if you haven't talked with us about that, please do, with either Dr. Hogue or myself. But the research award is pretty similar to what I've just described, that the sort of elements of the essay that I've described. You're not talking about a research, graduate program. You're talking about the institute or the institution, university that you're going to do your research with, and you're going to talk about that faculty mentor in some explicit ways, and then why this is the person you want to connect with, and your connection with them, and then really dive into the research that you're doing and the specifics and why this is the place, and why the UK or the Netherlands or wherever is where you really got to do this kind of research. So similar in kind of broader ways, but it's with the research, that component of the essay is going to look a little bit different. So in review so far, I've just talked about you're going to dive in pretty quickly to the program specifics, why this place. And then you'll want to kind of shift gears to talking about what you've done that sets you up to do this thing. So with the, since it's a study research award, you'll want to talk about your studies and your research, specific classes you've taken, your thesis, if you're writing a thesis, labs you've worked in, relationships with professors, maybe you've co-authored an article with them, on and on. You see where what internships you've had, experiences on a medical service team, or whatever. So then you'll want to kind of dive deep into those sort of aspects. And so this is the first time that I've talked about this sort of story element of these essays. So the talking about the program is a little bit that you want to go to is just really straightforward, and you'll have kind of that similar kind of direct sort of style with talking about your academic experiences, but you'll want to also have maybe a succinct story of, it doesn't have to be long here because you don't have a ton of space, but if there is an important element, an important example of your studying with a faculty mentor or doing some kind of research, then to give a story about you were in the lab and you did this thing and encountered this challenge but overcame it, blah blah blah. So it needs to be in service of why you're a fit for this program, but this is where you can start to add kind of a narrative element. And then you'll also there's a lot you're doing here in the study research, the statement of grant purpose, but you're also again kind of conveying why this place and how you're going to pursue that kind of cultural exchange, and that can be within your discipline. This is doing a MA in English is going to, I'm also very academically interested in theater, and so there's a great theater scene here, and I'll be able to participate in whatever the theater scene in this city, but also things that aren't related to your discipline as well. I want to run along this river, or I want to go to this museum, these sorts of things. Let's see. I want to give you a couple examples, and just so actually something I should have noted earlier is that we've invited all of you to our Canvas page, and most of you or all of you have accepted that. So you've got just a wealth of resources here, and that we do have documents on the study, specifically on the study statement of grant purpose and the personal statement. And so they actually used to be these really long documents. We've shortened them. So they're about 2 pages, something like that. And so we've shortened them because we don't want to overwhelm you with information, but there is a lot to convey. But we've kind of streamlined these, and while also offering some specific examples. And I'm actually going to be reading from the specific examples from those documents. Let's see. So they're in regards to talking about the program that you're wanting to pursue. Here's an example from a previous winner. This is the winner from this year's competition for UK Study Research Award in Public Health. I plan to pursue this degree in London because the city's scientific and colonial history has greatly influenced my research, and its diverse cultural environment would prepare me well for a career in global health. The RVC and LSHTM acronyms for the Royal Veterinary College and the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine, that's what it stands for. The RVC and the LSHTM are unmatched in producing global health solutions, and London, as a global center of innovation, research, and culture, is a fitting location for this degree program. Some of the world's most groundbreaking scientific discoveries, the structure of DNA and the malaria vector, for example, which have advanced science and improved health around the world, have taken place in London. I'm eager to participate in this rich scientific culture, Further, my honors thesis explores the political development of former Caribbean UK colonies. The more I've researched the UK's Health and Development Commission reports and responses, the more interested I have become in understanding the UK's role in development during the early to mid 20th century. So I don't actually recall where in the essay this is located. So this may be on the front end of things, but this may be after this person's articulated their the specific course of study. But we actually don't have this year's winners essays up on the Canvas page. We will, hopefully, I think this week we'll have those up. But you see a number of things here. So this person is connecting their academic focus to London and the sort of scientific culture there. And so I actually think this is probably after talking about the specific program. So you're not going to lead off by saying these things necessarily, but they're able to articulate wanting to participate in the scientific culture. But also this person has done different work in the Caribbean. And so connecting that sort of colonial history with that scientific history, and not just saying this in general ways, is saying, she says, scientific discoveries like the structure of DNA and the malaria vector, which both relate to her work, but then also not just saying, I'm interested in this colonial history. She says, the more I have researched the UK's Health and Development Commission reports and responses, the more I, et cetera, et cetera. So she's saying, I've done the work, and in these specific ways. So this is kind of the art to these essays, is that, and why, at first glance, it might seem like 2 pages and 1 page, single space. It's not very difficult, but again, you have to say a lot in a little. And so every little clause matters. And so when you can drop something like the structure of DNA and the malaria vector, for example, that's not even a full line. But it conveys this important sort of specificity. So that's an important example. Let's see. I'm gonna sort of move on to a different example. I don't have an example of listing of specific classes and professors, but so I just want to say right now that is really important. So you do want to make sure that you're that you right away state why this program, and here are some, you understand the program, you know what you're getting into, and that you know why you would thrive. So that's important, because then the committee, you don't want the committee to be reading your essay, and they do read through lots of these essays, and they read through them pretty quickly. They read through them thoroughly, but it's efficient. And so you don't want them leaving with questions after your essay. So you want them to be like, oh yeah, that's very clear why they would go to this program, and not just why this program, but why. You don't want them thinking, well, why don't you just study that in the US? You could study the same thing. You want to convey, well, this is unique to the UK, to the Netherlands, to South Africa, to Australia, wherever you're applying to. Okay, so another sort of example that you can, alongside the professors, the courses, those specific things that you want to mention. Another thing you can mention is an institute that is there. So this is an example from a 2019 UK study research winner. This is in Renaissance literature. She says, I became increasingly interested in York, the University of York, because of their world-class Center for Renaissance and Early Modern Studies, which hosts seminars, lectures, and collaborations that bring together the expertise of faculty and students studying the Renaissance and early modern period from disciplines as varied as politics, art history, and theater. So she knows the university well, and even beyond the department, there's this institute. Is it an institute? It's a center that is not within the English department, but it's this interdisciplinary thing. And she says, I want to be a part of that. That's and it's for these specific reasons. It's interdisciplinary: politics, art history, theater, which are all important to Renaissance and early modern work. So that's another sort of specific example there. let's see, an example of having sort of sufficient experience in the field that you're that you're in and wanting to be in. Let's see. I'm trying to decide between two examples here. Let's see. I will read this one. This is from our 2020 UK Study Research Award winner in biomedical science. Being able to study numerical analysis while learning the biochemical intricacies of the human body provides me with a technical edge when pursuing research problems in medicine. For instance, it has exposed me to an exciting joint project with Baylor's biochemistry and computer science department concerning eye disease detection through a convolutional neural network my freshman year. And I know this, I worked with a student, and so I know they went on and talked about this really cool app that they created based out of this work. And so this student goes on and gives these really specific examples and stories even of their work. I think that's all I'm gonna say about that. And I think I've covered the sort of cultural exchange bit pretty well too, so I'm not gonna say any more about that. There are a couple other things that we that are important to convey, whether implicitly or explicitly in your essays. Something that the Fulbright specifically mentions that it's interested in is maturity, flexibility, and adaptability. So these are three things that you'll want to convey at some level. This may be in the sort of cultural exchange conversation that you have in your essays, where you're showing how adaptable and flexible you are and mature you are. But I just want to note that in passing. Okay. I am going to, I know I've just shared lots and lots of info about the statement of grant purpose. Rather than, I do want to give plenty of space for questions, but rather than asking or allowing space now for questions, I'm going to continue on with the personal statement. And then at that point, I'll open it up to whatever questions you have. But before that, I'm going to take a drink of coffee. Okay. So the personal statement is less formal. These are both formal documents, but it's less formal than the statement of grant purpose. And you will, the sort of narrative, the stories that I talked about earlier, you will focus on sort of narrative in a bit more of a direct way, or more frequent sort of use of that kind of narrative. So the way that we talk about this, and Fulbright talks about this, is that it's an intellectual autobiography. So you're sharing this narrative of what got you interested in the academic disciplines that you're interested in. Why are you wanting to, what enlivens you about this? Where does this passion for art history come from? Let's see, let me make that more specific. Let's see, the expressionism within the 20th century. I don't know, what makes you, what has made you passionate about this? This could be a mentor, this could be a class, this could be going to an art museum and, I don't know, engaging with art in some way. We did our ETA info session on Friday, and one example that we have in our ETA documents is from, I think this is corresponds to what I'm saying here, but there's a student who studies English, but one of our winners from last year, studies English, but also art history. And so going to Madrid and going to the museum and seeing encountering what she studied in a museum brought tears to her eyes. And so she told a story about this. And so, that's an example of a way that you can convey, as a part of your intellectual autobiography. Before I sort of wade further into these waters, one thing I should mention from the beginning is that we don't, and this is one thing going back to my literature and composition students, I always say there's this temptation to start a paper in the beginning of time, and I always say that's too large of a scope. All of human history, focus it, a little bit more. And so you want your essay, you don't want it to be, well, when I was born, blah blah blah. You want to start a little bit after your birth. So focus it. Maybe it was in high school that you started. Maybe it was earlier in life. That's fine if it's earlier in life, but you just want to, if you had a profound moment in 6th grade, great. Say, you can, that would be a place to start. It also doesn't have to be chronological, the sort of narrative, but it can be. You want to be coherent, but it doesn't have to be, 6th grade, then 12th grade, then college. Okay, let's see. Other sort of narrative that you're going to be talking about, sort of transformative courses, mentors, professors, internships you've had, books, labs, papers, jobs, whatever has led you to want to pursue this graduate degree or this research. That is, and to pursue this field professionally, that's what you want to talk about. You're also, so this essay also has to do a lot of work. You're going to want to convey in some way your interest in your sort of cultural sensitivity, your interest in that cultural exchange, and why again this sort of in a different way, in this sort of intellectual autobiography sort of style, why that cultural exchange is important to you, and because it is such a centrally important thing to the Fulbright, why you want to pursue this academic work in this host country. So there are a couple ways you can go about this, and but you don't want to repeat what you said in your statement of grant purpose. You can talk in there are different registers, these 2 different essays, as I'm hopefully articulating, but then there are different stories you can tell, right? So with the cultural exchange sort of discussion in this essay, you might say, one recommendation we have, not all of you are from Texas, but you all are living in Texas, at least during the school year. And so Texas is one of those regions or states that captures the world's imagination. So lean into that. Talk about, maybe you love going out two-stepping, or you love Texas brisket, or whatever. Lean into that. Or maybe you're from anywhere else in the U.S. and there's some particular aspect of that culture. You're from the middle, you're from Wisconsin, or you're from California, or wherever, and you could say, talk about one particular sort of aspect about about that. I'm trying to think of an example. I'm not thinking of a specific example here, but you can just, there's so much that you could talk about. You're going to have way too many examples of that sort of slice of U.S. culture. But again, stay away from sort of broad subjects like freedom or something like this. But think more locally, regionally, two-stepping. And maybe you love two-stepping and you want to study in Spain, and there is a particular dance that you want to learn, and so you could have this kind of exchange or something like this. So that could be one way to talk about it. You could also talk about that cultural exchange piece as it relates to your discipline as well. Let's see. I've mentioned this, but I want to reaffirm this. Thinking through specific, this is either or both essays, thinking through, if you're wanting to go to, okay, so one of our 2020 study research winners he applied to University of Liverpool, and so he at first was just kind of broadly talking about UK culture. You can talk about UK culture as a whole, but you always want to get specific. And so I remember talking to him about, what are the geographical landmarks that you're interested in? What are the museums that you want to go to? What do you, are there foods? Is there, I talked about, musicians from Liverpool. So they're just, you can talk about all kinds of different things. He talked about running along the river, and he talked about the Liverpool was a sort of important, has long been an important port in the UK, and was therefore an important part of the slave trade. So there's a museum about the slave trade in Liverpool. So he mentions wanting to go to this museum. So having some pretty clear understanding of the host country that you're going to, and even the sort of local place, that's going to be vital. Okay, let me shift and now give you a couple examples, as I did with the last time. Let's see. This is an example from our 2021 UK Study Research Award winner, Public Health Award. Already read a little bit of her statement of grant purpose, but this is from her personal statement. This is the opening lines. And this is, note the sort of narrative quality, but also note the details. I remember taking a seat in the courtyard of a small public clinic in Port-au-Prince, Haiti, when a woman walked in holding her newborn baby. Doctors and nurses emerged from the rooms, then convened and consulted each other around her in the courtyard. Her child suffered from hydrocephalus. The grief was palpable. She goes on and gives further details, but she's talking about, she's crafting this story of in this courtyard of this small, not just in this country, but in a courtyard in a small clinic in Port-au-Prince, the capital city of Haiti. And this, it's a newborn baby that walks in, has this suffering from this disease. The grief was palpable. The readers hangs on with issue one because in part because the readers were hanging on to that story. It also conveys this really important cultural exchange experience she had, but also it was this medical service trip that she was a part of. So it sort of encapsulated everything that, a story that really conveyed why she wants to do the Fulbright. Okay. The next example I want to give, so think of this as a memoir or reflective essay. Here's an example. This also, if I'm remembering rightly, is an opening line. This is from 2020 Study Research Award winner. It says, although now pursuing a career in a medical field, an interest in the sciences was the least defining of my characteristics growing up. I grew up in a humble apartment in San Jose, California, where academics was never a focus for my family. Instead, my parents entered the workforce as bartenders out of high school, and I plan to do the same after my graduation. However, this plan changed during my junior year in high school, where my dad broke his neck while walking our dog through the creek. This rendered him forever paralyzed from the neck down and left my family emotionally and financially in turmoil. Let's see, I'm skipping a sentence or two. He says, fortunately, I was introduced to biomedical research a few months later, which fueled my interest in a career in biomedicine, et cetera, et cetera. So he's studying paralysis and is in his future career going to help those that are in paralysis. So it was this really, really profound and tragic family experience that launched his career. And so it don't think, I mean, not everyone has that kind of story. That's perfectly fine. But the point here is that he's telling his story and being honest about it. But the first example is doing the same thing too. She's telling her story of going on this medical service trip, and he's telling the story of how he got started in this. He was never interested in science, but this incident prompted it. And he gives some of those specific details as well that I noted. Okay, an example of, let's see, there are two examples of talking about, I'm gonna read both, just a little excerpt of both. I feel like this is instructive. So both of these examples share some specific ways that how stories about what has helped shape these winners into their sort of shape their academic interests. So here's example number one. Entering college after seeing the impact of the, I always pronounce this incorrectly, chikungunya virus on my friends and their families in Haiti on that last trip, I was interested in mosquito-transmitted infectious diseases. That interest encouraged me to join Dr. Pitt's Arthropod Sensory and Neuroethology Laboratory and complete a research internship at the National School of Tropical Medicine at Baylor College of Medicine. So note real quickly here that this person, this is the public health winner that I've shared a few examples from. She pretty quickly talked about this story and how she ended up going on 2 trips to Haiti, and how this in one sentence was able to say, or she talks about that trip in the first sentence, and then shifts to say in the very next sentence, I joined Dr. Pitt's lab and gave some specific info there. And then I also did this research institute at the research internship at the National School of Tropical Medicine. So that's one of those ways where you don't have a whole lot of space, but in 2 sentences, you can transition from this story to, hey, here are 2 things practical things and really cool things that I ended up doing. Remember, this person is going to the Royal Veterinary College and the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine. Talks about her internship in the U.S. at the National School of Tropical Medicine. So you see that very succinct but very clear connection there. One more example, and then I'm gonna stop talking here. But so this student is kind of sharing the story and then moving on to some things that they've done. Because of my grandmother's work ethic, my father earned a science degree and became employed at NASA as a project manager. Growing up, I followed him around the country to national conventions and shuttle launches, seeding in me the deep respect for scientific discoveries. With this scientific inclination, I enrolled at Baylor University through the Science Research Fellows Program, a highly selective Bachelor of Science degree that nurtures scientific thinking through an individualized curriculum and specialized mentorship. Through this program, I pursued research in Dr. Joseph Tabi's cancer biology lab, where I conducted independent research in studying the contributions of non-coding RNA regulation of histone modifiers in the cellular mechanisms of cancer metastasis. She goes on to talk about a number of other things that she's done, 2 internships and other things. She shares this story, but very quickly moves on to her specific things that she's done that help that convey why she's a fit for this this plan that she's proposing. And one thing I will note here is that we do see often, sometimes we see applicants that write sort of a long story about how their mother or father, whoever, family member, or some mentored them. And it's okay and good to mention that mentorship, but you do want to move past that pretty quickly. She, if you could see this, she really talks about this in 1 to maybe 2 sentences, and that's about as much as you'd want to share. That's an important part of her development and why she became interested in science, because those that came before her. So mention them briefly, but then get on to you, because this is not an essay about your mentors. This is an essay about you. And so that's something that is, I think, helpful to note there. Okay, I have been giving you lots and lots and lots of information here. So I want to just take a step back here and open the floor to each of you and just give you the options or the space to ask any questions that you have about any aspect of these essays, and it can be kind of general questions. It can be particular to your application. So, just why don't you unmute yourself and ask away as I take a sip of coffee. Who's going to be that brave soul that asks the first question?
I have a question.
Great.
So you'd recommend, like, in both of the essays talking like specifically about the country that we're going to and like what we're doing to, like, I don't know, get that cultural.
Yeah, that's a great question, Maria. And we do suggest that. So one way that you might think of it is in the statement of grant purpose, you might want to sort of focus on, how does this fit with your disciplinary interests, the sort of country that you're going to. And then with the personal statement could be more of a, the river you want to run by, the museums you want to go to, kind of that, and the slice of US culture that you're wanting to share. So it doesn't have to be that way. There's no one way to write these essays, but that would make some sense to have that a little bit more professionally focused in that statement of grant purpose. But then in the personal statement, it's a little bit more personal. I'm actually